11:37 p.m., January 31st, 2019. Hull, England. A university student walked alone through snow-covered streets. Her friends had just put her safely in a taxi, paid the driver, watched the vehicle leave. They thought she was going home. They thought she was safe. But CCTV cameras told a different story. A silver car had been circling these streets for hours, driving around and around with no apparent purpose. Just before midnight, that same car pulled over. Someone stepped out, crossed the road, and began following her. This is the story of Libby Squire and the predator who'd been waiting in the dark. Before we dive into this investigation, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. How CCTV footage reveals the truth, and how communities come together when tragedy strikes. Drop a comment if you think CCTV should be mandatory on every street. Now let's begin. January 31st, 2019, 8:30 p.m. Libby left her student accommodation on Wellesley Avenue in Hull, England. She and several friends walked together to another student house nearby. The plan was simple and familiar: spend time with friends, then head to a popular nightclub called the Welly. Just another Thursday night for university students. Around 10 p.m., Libby texted her boyfriend Connor good night. She was leaving her phone at home. At 11:20, the group arrived at the nightclub. Their arrival captured on CCTV cameras, but security refused Libby entry. She was clearly intoxicated, struggling to walk steadily. The security team made the decision. She'd already had too much. Here's where the night fractured. The group regrouped outside. 10 minutes later, Libby's friends made a choice that would haunt them forever. They put her in a taxi, gave the driver money, told him to take her home to Wellesley Avenue. They watched the taxi drive away. Then they went back inside. This decision would spark fierce debate across the country. The principle of going together, coming home together, became a rallying cry. People shared stories of carrying intoxicated friends home, of staying sober to protect their groups, of the unspoken pact that you never leave someone vulnerable alone. Libby's friends faced crushing scrutiny, though investigators stressed they'd done nothing criminally wrong. They'd tried to help. They'd paid for safe transport. They couldn't have known what was waiting in those dark streets. Just before 3 a.m., the group arriving home sent a text to Libby's housemate, asking how she was. The response sent ice through their veins. Libby hadn't come home. Nobody had seen or heard from her. They assumed she was still at the club somehow. But as they called around, a terrifying picture emerged. Not one person had seen her. Her phone was still at her house. Her keys were found in the garden. Libby was somewhere out there in bitterly cold weather, snow covering the roads. They called police immediately. Police took the disappearance seriously from minute one. Within hours, the media ran with the story. Libby's face appeared everywhere. The taxi driver was tracked down quickly. He confirmed dropping her at Wellesley Avenue, said he'd glanced back and seen her walking toward her front door, but she never went inside. Why? Fortunately, CCTV cameras covered the streets extensively. Knowing when she'd been placed in the taxi, investigators began piecing together her movements. The footage showed Libby walking nearby at 11:37 p.m. At 11:40 p.m., two passersby found her in the snow. They tried to help, but Libby was crying, agitated, confused. She refused assistance. They felt helpless. A group of students saw her outside their house, invited her inside to check on her, but she kept walking. Authorities theorized she might be suffering early hypothermia effects. The cold was brutal that night. Days passed. Forensic officers collected evidence. Specialist teams searched along the River Hull. Students joined massive search parties. The community rallied. Over 200 people volunteered. This became the biggest investigation in Humberside police history. Police asked residents to check gardens, sheds, outbuildings. Door-to-door inquiries continued. Images of her clothing circulated widely. They asked anyone spotted on CCTV around the same time to come forward, but nothing turned up. Absolutely nothing. Then came the breakthrough. A resident near Oak Road playing fields reported hearing screaming around midnight. The noise was so loud it woke him. He checked his phone to note the exact time. Looking out his window, he saw someone hurrying toward a car. Using this time frame, police searched the CCTV footage again, working backward. If this was Libby, there was a 30 to 40-minute window between when she was first seen wandering and this specific moment. The timeline was narrowing. Finally, investigators spotted something chilling. A silver Vauxhall Astra had been circulating the area for hours before Libby was last seen. just driving around and around, for no apparent reason. Just before midnight, this same car pulled over near where Libby was walking. Someone stepped out, crossed the road quickly. Libby appeared to be near a bus stop, but she was actually walking back toward her house. The person crossed back over, walked along the opposite side of the road. They were assessing the situation, checking if Libby was alone, gauging their opportunity. The person stopped briefly, then crossed back over and began talking to Libby. 5 minutes passed, then they were walking together, but in the opposite direction from where Libby had been heading. The driver sat in the car waiting. Other headlights came and went. The driver was waiting for the area to clear. At midnight, Libby got inside the vehicle. The car drove off. Her watch was later found in that exact area, suggesting a struggle. If the car had been parked even a foot further away, the camera might have missed everything. The car was tracked pulling into Oak Road playing fields. 10 minutes passed. This aligned with when the resident heard screaming. Then the car lights came on. The vehicle exited the fields and headed back into town. 2 women came forward with another complaint that would prove crucial. Around 3 a.m., someone stepped out in front of them on the street, began behaving inappropriately. They were horrified. Using this description, time, and location, police found the person. Everything matched. Same individual, same car. Following movements before and after that night, they got a hit on the license plate. On February 6th, police announced an arrest in connection with Libby's disappearance. Forensic investigators descended on a house about a mile from where Libby was last seen. A man was arrested on suspicion of abduction. The car was recovered. The investigation's tempo increased dramatically. The arrested man was Paweł Relowicz, a married father who worked as a butcher. He'd moved to the UK from Poland as a teenager. On paper, Paweł was a hard-working family man. Neighbors described someone friendly, polite, always smiling. Nothing seemed unusual at all, but beneath that surface lurked something monstrous. After taking his prints and DNA, he was linked to several crimes going back almost 2 years. Paweł had been breaking into homes, following women on streets, engaging in inappropriate public behavior. One woman woke to find him staring at her through her bedroom door. Her housemates chased him, tried photographing him, but the image was too blurry. Another time, he did this on the same street where Libby lived. Fingerprints were lifted, DNA collected, but without a criminal record, no matches were made. Until now. Now, there were dozens of matches. According to sources, Paweł was a predator whose behavior had been escalating. He'd tell his wife he was going for an evening run. Instead, he'd prowl the streets. While his house turned up nothing during searches, his vehicle told a different story. Inside were stolen items, evidence of his pattern of behavior, photographs clearly taken without permission. When asked about Libby, he denied ever seeing her. But when shown the CCTV footage, he changed his story. He claimed to be offering her a ride home, said he drove her to Oak Fields, then left, went home. It wasn't quite an admission, but it placed him at the scene. Given the screams the resident heard, investigators knew there was much more to this story. They felt this was no longer a missing person case. Libby had been harmed. They had enough to charge Paweł with multiple offenses from various times, but prosecutors said there still wasn't enough to link him directly to Libby's disappearance. Not yet. 7 weeks after Libby went missing, tragic remains were found in the Humber estuary. Around the neck was a small necklace with the letter L. After 7 weeks of hoping against hope, Libby's family received the news they'd been dreading. Testing confirmed what investigators feared. Evidence showed she'd been harmed before being killed. The elements had affected her remains so severely that determining an exact cause proved impossible. The pathologist couldn't confirm certain details with certainty. Police believed her body had been placed in the river behind the fields, then floated into the River Humber. Everyone was devastated. Lisa, Libby's mother, was especially upset learning where her daughter was found. Libby had a fear of water. Not knowing certain details only deepened the heartbreak. Lisa posted to social media, "I cannot thank you enough, my darling, for making me a mummy, for choosing me to be your mommy. I kept you safe for as long as I could, and I am so sorry I could not keep you safe on that night. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." In August 2019, 7 months since Libby first went missing, Paweł appeared in court for other charges. He initially pled not guilty, then changed his plea last minute. He was convicted on multiple counts total: inappropriate conduct, burglary, Between 2017 and 2019, he was sentenced to 8.5 years, reduced after appeal. Authorities were thankful he was locked up. They continued building their case, searching through thousands of hours of footage to solidify his movements that night. More footage showed him driving back to the same location around 2:30 a.m., just 2 hours after initially being there with Libby. He stayed briefly before heading back into town. This was the final piece they needed. Pavel would have no reason to return unless he was concealing evidence. More tests came back after months of waiting. Forensic evidence confirmed what investigators suspected. Pavel changed his story again. Now he claimed it was consensual, but investigators knew this wasn't true. They finally had enough to file charges. In October 2019, almost 300 people gathered for Libby's funeral. Just 2 weeks later, police made the announcement everyone was waiting for. After consulting with prosecutors, Pavel Relowich was charged with assault and murder of Libby Squire. As he was read the charges via translator, he started laughing. He appeared completely unfazed. His own mother said she knew in her heart he didn't do anything, that he was a good boy. However, she added that her heart was breaking for the Squire family, and if her son had done something, he should be punished. Pavel pled not guilty, maintaining his story. The trial, after many pandemic delays, finally began in January 2021. The prosecution presented a damning case. Pavel was a highly dangerous predator whose crimes had escalated severely. He was willing to do anything to fulfill his urges. He saw women as objects, got a thrill from frightening them. From the second he saw Libby that night, alone, cold, upset and vulnerable, she became his target. He knew instantly what he would do once she got into his car. If it wasn't Libby, it would have been someone else. On that day or another, he was intent on harming someone. It just happened to be Libby on that fateful night. The defense focused on timing. If his car pulled into the fields at 12:11 and screams were heard at 12:14, and he was back out driving by 12:20, that left limited time. But the prosecution said it was absolutely possible. Libby was probably unable to fight back, unsteady on her feet. Pavel was incredibly fit and determined in that moment. Prosecutors also said they didn't have to prove he did everything in that small window. The forensic evidence and CCTV spoke for themselves. He returned to the scene 2 hours later anyway. That's when he could have cleaned up and moved evidence. Prosecutors argued it was clear he was always looking to push things further. When his earlier crimes were no longer fulfilling, it was only a matter of time before he took it further still. He was getting more brazen because he was getting away with it time and again. After a difficult trial lasting 2 weeks, the jury began deliberating. The jury returned with guilty verdicts on both counts, by an 11-1 majority. Pavel was found guilty of assaulting and murdering Libby Squire. He was later jailed for life with a minimum term of 27 years. Upon sentencing, the judge said Libby didn't stand a chance that night. He said Pavel may never be released, and if he is, he'll be monitored for the rest of his days. He called the case unimaginably harrowing. If Pavel is successful in parole applications, he'll be in his early 50s. Outside court, Libby's family addressed the media. As a family, today's verdict changes nothing for us. There is no closure. We don't get to have Libby back. Our lives don't revert back to normal. However, we are pleased that all the hard work of the police and legal teams has been recognized. Libby will always be with us, and we are all so proud of our beautiful, caring, wonderful girl. Although she has been physically taken from us, the memories we have and the love we share will never be taken. After his conviction, his wife separated from him, moved back to Poland. She maintains the relationship was good. She was horrified when everything came out. Lisa remains committed to campaigning to change laws, asking for harsher sentences. Police joined forces with the Squire family, urging people to report what's considered lower-level offenses. Lisa even met with then Prime Minister Boris Johnson, arguing that whole-life tariffs should be automatic for anyone convicted of murder. She said Boris Johnson told her there aren't the prison spaces. Lisa responded, "Well, then build more prisons. It's as simple as that. Anyone who goes out and takes a life should be given a whole-life tariff. In 27 years, Libby doesn't come back. I don't get my daughter back. My children don't get their sister back. We have a whole life sentence to live." In 2022, Lisa said she wanted to meet with Pavel in prison to talk about what happened that night. Pavel agreed initially. "I don't hate him," Lisa explained. "I'm not angry with him. I just want information from him. For me, it's very much about finding out how she was in those last minutes of her life. It's actually quite brave for him to agree to see me. I am grateful. Nothing he can tell me can be worse than what goes on in my imagination. But in February 2023, Pavel retracted the agreement, saying he felt portrayed badly in the media because of the Squire family. As a result, he no longer wanted to talk to Lisa. For Lisa, who had shown nothing but grace toward him, it was a huge blow. Clearly his way of keeping some element of control. Libby's family continues showing unwavering strength, channeling all their energy into hopefully making changes to laws, keeping Libby's memory alive. Lisa said, "Every morning in that lull between sleep and waking up, I still think life is normal. Then I wake up and remember Libby is gone. Sometimes the grief takes me by surprise, looking at pictures of Libby that I've looked at a million times, thinking, why has someone taken this lovely human being?" The question of responsibility haunts everyone who knew what happened that night. Libby's friends did what they thought was right, putting her safely in a taxi with money for the fare. They watched it drive away. They had no way of knowing a predator was circling those streets, waiting for someone exactly like Libby, vulnerable and alone. The principle of staying together, of going home together, became a national conversation. But in the end, the only person responsible for Libby's death was the predator who took her life. Pavel chose to hunt that night. He chose to target Libby. He chose evil, and now he'll spend decades behind bars, while a bright young woman full of dreams will never come home. If this case made you reconsider walking alone at night, hit that like button and subscribe to Visões Proibidas, because the lessons here aren't about blame, they're about awareness, about understanding that predators circle and wait, that they hide behind ordinary lives, that CCTV catches what we can't see. Drop a comment with your thoughts. Did Libby's friends make the right choice putting her in a taxi? Should they have gone with her? Or is the only person to blame the predator who was waiting? Let's have that conversation. Until next time, remember this. CCTV cameras record patterns. They show cars circling for hours. They capture the moment someone crosses a street. Technology can't prevent tragedy, but it can deliver justice. And sometimes, a mother's strength can change laws. Lisa Squire lost her daughter, but she's fighting to make sure other families don't suffer the same fate. Pavel Relowich sits in prison, serving 27 years minimum. But for Libby's family, the sentence is life. Every morning they wake up and remember she's gone. Every birthday, every holiday, every milestone she'll never reach. The predator took everything from them, but he couldn't take their love, their memories, their determination to honor Libby's life. 200 volunteers searched for Libby. Strangers who'd never met her gave up their time, walked through snow and cold, because that's what communities do. They come together. They refuse to give up. They search until answers are found. The CCTV footage that caught Pavel was everywhere in Hull. Every street corner, every business, every home with a doorbell camera. That network of technology created an invisible web, one he couldn't escape. He thought he'd been careful, circling for hours, waiting for the perfect moment. But every second was recorded, every movement tracked, every return to the scene captured. Technology doesn't forget, and neither do we. Libby Squire should be finishing her degree today, starting her career, building her future. Instead, she's a name, a case, a reminder that evil exists, that predators wait, that we must stay vigilant, stay together, stay aware, because the silver car might be circling your street right now, and you'll never know until it's too late.